Okay, now I think it's doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
Preparing the live stream.
Yeah, you're live
Where are we live in?
on Crystal's
Okay, cool.
page.
Awesome.
Sorry, it took us a second. Hello.
It's always the way though.
Yeah. Well, they're always changing the settings too.
And when you don't do something often, it's just like, where is that piece?
Yeah, exactly. So welcome to everybody. We're finally here. You'll have to excuse us for being a few minutes late. We could not figure out the live stream option to get it onto Facebook. So anyways, while probably Allison and Laura are trying to share to their pages, I just wanted to say thank you for joining in, and we're excited to be back. And I guess we can kind of just each introduce ourselves a little bit. We are with a virtual admin agency that we created together called Elevate. And so each of us come with varying different backgrounds in business. So my background was like 20 years in corporate doing finances, human resources, and overall business management. And then 5 years ago, I kind of transitioned into the space of doing business consulting and accounting for companies on a contractual type basis, in both, corporate type businesses as well as like on the online space as well. And then have also dabbled in direct sales and had my own boutique at one point. So all kinds of different little facets to that. And then I'll let Laura and Allison introduce themselves, and we'll talk about like why we're here today.
Go for it, Allison.
Yeah, I'm mute because I'm like, so my name's Alison, and gosh, it's hard to explain what I do. So I'm a shamanic practitioner, intentional creativity teacher. No, darling, you can't be in this one. Sorry, sweetheart. I'm trying to get my son not to be in this. And essentially, I have worked in kind of business and administration for about 10 plus years in public health, doing event management and administration. And so, love you too, darling. Thank you. And so from that, I've kind of woven those things together and essentially created this kind of business where it's all about creativity, but also about smashing down kind of the paradigms and things like that, and moving back to a more holistic and kind of natural, i.e., earth-based way of looking at things that's underpinned by ethics and morals and virtues, which sometimes are woefully inadequate in the world when I look at it in business. And so that's the reason why we've kind of come together, because we have a shared common experience, and that's kind of provided fuel for us moving forward. So yeah, that's
I'm
me.
just going to put my plate back and then
Tay always wants to be involved. So I'm Laura, and yeah, I suppose my experience is probably quite similar to both Allison and Crystal's. I started entrepreneurship maybe like 2014, 15-ish. I kind of been in the corporate world for quite a bit and wanted a change. And so I kind of went down a path of, like we all do, and this is probably something we're going to speak to, like went down a path of doing my coaching certifications, getting accreditation in this modality or that modality. And, but in the process, I had always held like a part-time role, or, I dabbled in and out of, different roles through the time. And then I found myself, like in 2020, like working full-time for myself. And so obviously in that process, that kind of just like overtook everything else, because then I had a contract with another party, and like, but I think as I've evolved, as everything around me has evolved, and different kind of like training, and you embody everything that you've learned, the thing that I realized is there is a real aptitude for how to see what's not working, like, and how to actually look at like how to get the results out of your business when sometimes we get so clouded by everything that needs to happen. And this is like where a eulogy to the solopreneur, it really is this like in this space I'm actually really passionate about, because in many ways, as women, we've been led to believe that we either have to go at it alone because it's the only way we can actually get the support that we need, or you have to have a big, massive team because, you know, that's the only way to be successful in business. And obviously that's quite a generalization, and it's not true in every single facet of life and business. But, you know, our collective experience really showed and highlighted spaces where we're not supported. And, you know, we did the first live stream series of The Elephant in the Room, and spoke to a lot of shit that had gone down. And, you know, it's been a kind of a hot minute since we all kind of came back. And in many ways, we all had to heal. We had our own life going on and all that sort of stuff. And I think the thing for me that's really kind of stood out in the last 6 months is the need to embody what it is that you're here to do. Like the need to really, like, if you want to create that shift and you want to see the results in your business or in the things that you do in life, there's an element there of you can't fake that embodiment. You can't fake it to yourself. Like, and so it's like you're either going to crash and burn when you're trying to be and do all the things, or you're going to do yourself a disservice by, you know, sacrificing what it is that you actually stand for. And so that's actually how this particular conversation came about, because obviously we're all passionate in our own spaces. But yeah, for me, this actually really stood out in the last 6 months of everything that I could no longer tolerate or no longer stand for just completely dropped away. And, you know, there's a lot of pain in that, because like we as human beings, we want to hold on for grim death. And, you know, so this eulogy to the solopreneur really came about from that conversation, and, you know, and where we actually decided to take that in 2024. You know, and this live stream series was actually something that we were actually going to do weeks ago. And then kind of like life just took over, and, you know, I believe that everything happens exactly when it's supposed to. And particularly at this time of year where, you know, tensions are really freaking high, and we really struggle to really kind of, you know, keep up with what and however you do it, right? Personal practices, energetics around like Christmas, all that sort of stuff. So I kind of thought it was a great time to actually do the live stream and really kind of come back to a place of, okay, what is going to serve you and your business going through this holiday period. So kind of that's a bit about me and a kind of bit of an intro to kind of where we're going. But yeah, there's a few things we did want to kind of have a chat about, and we'll try and keep it as brief as possible. But yeah, the intention is to kind of create this stuff into a podcast going into the new year, probably midway through next year in all reality. But yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because you said the timing of things, and it's the title of this and the whole topic around the eulogy to the solopreneur, it really speaks to the work that we started in 2023 when we launched this virtual admin agency, and it came from this place of need where there's a lot of people out there that are small business owners, entrepreneurs, you know, partnerships, things like that desire support, need support because they are burning themselves out, but there wasn't really anything in the marketplace that was really geared towards that. You had either you were kind of doing it yourself, or you were going to places like Upwork or something like that and just hiring out little jobs, but you didn't have a consistent person to go to that you could really build that sense of trust with. Or you were to the point that you either had, like Laura mentioned, a massive team, or you were hiring like an OBM, which is like a full-time manager for your business. But if you're not, you know, I'd say multi six figures, probably, to be honest, to support something like that, there was this gap in the marketplace. And so when we kind of all came together, we were like, we want to help serve these people and give them this level of support that is not readily available. So, you know, we kind of began that process with our beta testers in 2023, and it's been beautiful kind of watching the unfolding of that, and just you know, even something as simple as like, you know, our chats that we have, our private chats with our clients, it's like the inspiration and the things that come out of that just from something simple as having access to bounce ideas off has been like huge. And so, you know, we began this because we saw kind of this trend, you know, and we've been seeing it over the years where, you know, corporate is very much like, you know, kind of this competition versus collaboration type of thing. You know, with it, we're moving from this feeling of that if somebody else is doing something that it's going to take away from you, to now understanding that when you help support another business or another person, it actually raises the collective all around, and it also benefits you too. I mean, like, it's just like a sharing across the board there. So that's where the whole idea of like the death of the solopreneur is coming in too, is like that we don't have to operate in that space anymore.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's fascinating because if you take even, you know, like I'm a stickler for words and stuff like that, but even if you take like the word, the solopreneur and stuff like that, and you actually look to its genesis, i.e., where did it start, where did it begin, how did it come about, and stuff like that. Like it's actually a term that's used in government like papers to describe like a different type of entrepreneur. So you've got like, you know, business partners, kind of like solopreneur, and so sole trader, sorry, over here in Australia, but it might be a different term there. And the thing is, it's come out of like a government kind of regulation kind of understanding that doesn't really mean much to the collective. And the thing is that when we look at these kind of words, and then we, you know, look to the society, the overculture in general and stuff like that, and what kind of meaning, because essentially we're meaning making, you know, beings, we're all created from story and stuff like that, like what kind of behaviors and attitudes and patterns get ascribed to that thing that actually already exist in the collective. And so for me, when I was looking at like the solopreneur and the kind of the death or the eulogy to the solopreneur, for me, I was looking at a lot of really unhelpful patterns of behavior from the collective that kind of push into that word, and then from that we kind of gather meaning from it. And so some of the things are basically like a hyper independent kind of culture, a culture that very much is into competition over collaboration, and it's an environment sometimes where there's lots of isolation and separation that's involved, and that kind of breeds within itself this very strange, like kind of anti-human thing that I think of, because like we're all connected intimately in some way, shape, or form, and we're all kind of like, our need is for us to be together in groups and units and stuff like that. And when you think about something like the solopreneur, it's actually breaking apart the natural way that humans want to gather together, to come together, to share ideas, to share stories, to share resources for a win-win situation kind of thing. And so for me, that word actually, it says a lot and a little when you pull all of that meaning out of it. And that's one of the reasons, like even for myself, when I look at it, and, you know, part of kind of looking at this wider picture that's involved with the different layers of meaning of this word, is actually realizing that a lot of the things that are ascribed to that are things that I believe in. Like, I don't believe in competition. I don't believe in hyper independence, because that's actually just a trauma response from, you know, families being separated and nuclear family and stuff like that. So it actually means it kind of goes a lot deeper into what we're talking about here. But it impacts all entrepreneurs. Thinking that you have to do it alone is actually a lie. And it's a huge lie that's perpetrated, because the reality is that humans evolve with other humans, and we evolve in groups. We evolve together to basically share resources and to have win-win scenarios so that we can kind of like thrive and survive. We're in the thriving phase of life at the moment, but like that's the thing. Like, and when you share that kind of, you know, for want of a better thing, your intellectual property, or your the way that you see a certain thing, or your perspective, when you share that with another person, not only are you affected by it and you kind of like, oh yeah, okay, that's kind of cool, I didn't see it like that, but the other person is affected by it, and there's this kind of really amazing cohesion that occurs, and then from it, that's where the magic occurs. And without that connection and without that kind of conversation, that doesn't happen. And so in a way, we kind of perpetuate this isolation and separation, and I have to do it all by myself. I mean, I have a classic example of growing up in New Zealand, of a pattern of one of my parents is like hyper independence, is where I got it from, is that I don't want to ask anyone for help, because if I do, they won't do it how I want it to be done. And so it's just a mechanism to, you know, not be vulnerable, not ask for help. And in vulnerability, which is really interesting, like in the vulnerability is actually the strength of the connection that you have with someone. And I think that's really important, not only in life, but also in business, because we are moving very fast into a new way of doing business. And the new way of doing business, from what I can see, is underpinned massively on virtues, values, morals, ethics. If you don't have any, it's going to be hard. You can still survive, but you know, we're moving into a different way of being, not only as like, you know, personally, but like as families, but communities, but also in business. Everything is changing. And that's part of the reason why that concept, in a way, needs to kind of be laid down and put to rest, because it's not helpful. And I see it affect a lot of mostly women entrepreneurs, but also men. It is probably skewed quite heavily towards women entrepreneurs, because that's also another collective thing, you know, we've all got to do a super mum kind of vibe. So yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, but it's one that I think is really important to have, because the reality is like, what are you going to do? Like, you know, when it's dying, it's death, like you got to let it go. You got to kind of, you know, be ritualistic about it and go, okay, cool, see you later. But then what do you do? And the way that you do business is really by finding support structures, people that you can talk to, people that you can hang out with and collaborate with, have ideas, co-create with. Like, that's where we're moving to, create community, have this, I don't really particularly like the word, but it kind of gets things across, like it's a hive mind. So we're all together, you know, we're all in this together, we're all creating this amazing magical creature, you know, in business and stuff, and we can all bounce off ideas. Without that, you're just in an echo chamber. And there is, I don't think, any way that you can move forward and thrive without having to put in a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And I don't want to put in any effort. Like, I don't think it's necessary.
And it's interesting because you've touched on quite a few topics in that, right? So it's like one I actually want to kind of bring to is like the reason where like women in particular have struggled with this collaboration environment is it actually, and you know, and correct me if it doesn't kind of relate with you guys, but I feel it brings up the sister wound to a whole new level. Like it's just it's almost like you've got to hold your cards close, because there's this air of, you know, oh, I can't share my innermost vulnerabilities, or I can't share my innermost thoughts because I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be, you know, whatever else we want to bring up to it, right? So there's judgment, there's discernment, there's, you know, someone's going to take my stuff. And I can't tell you how often in some like particular entrepreneur groups, you actually see people posting, XYZ took my content. This person's taking my blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and obviously a lot of this stuff is intellectual property, but this actually just, it plays into that sister wound, and it stops us from allowing ourselves to be in a truly collaborative environment. And I suppose in many ways, we've all experienced the opposite, but we've also experienced the blessing around collaboration and what that continues to show us in every week, you know what I mean? Like, and obviously in different spaces, we're in some spaces together, we're in some spaces apart, but it's like, for me, this true idea of collaboration, and I went to Seven Sisters a couple of weeks ago, and for those who don't know what that is, it's a women's festival here in Australia, and you know, and it's always, I mean, the last time I went, it felt more oh no, it was probably more like hippie orientated. Like this time it actually felt more collaborative. It felt more grounded. It was just like, and obviously it's been a couple of years since I'd been, but I was sharing with Alison last week, like what my takeaways. And for me, I'd kind of gone in with not really having intentions as such. I'd gone there to support a good friend who was releasing her book. And, my intentions were to support her. But what I actually gained from that was numerous conversations with, women who I know, love, and trust around entrepreneurship, around business, around that collaborative space of being like, sometimes it just takes someone who knows you really well that just says, hey, have you thought about going down this path? Or have you thought about that? Or, hey, this is how I see this coming together. And sometimes when we get stuck in our own mind, and this for me is where that real fierce independence shows up, is like we get so stuck in our own mind that we literally become like the dog sitting on the nail and just like going around and around in circles and not actually knowing that we can actually stand up and move ourselves out of that position. It's like, in NLP circles is like an analogy that gets used all the time, but it's just like you literally you end up analyzing and being so analytical in what you're actually doing that we overcomplicate the process because we're become so fiercely independent that we don't want to ask for help, or we maybe don't even know where to ask for help or what help to ask for, because you get so lost in the process. And I think this is something that we've done really, really well, in the work that we've done together, because it's like we've each got our individual stuff, but we've also got the agency. And just sometimes just having another pair of eyes on what it is that you're wanting to create, or like just just knowing that you might be doing it yourself, but just having someone else be like just a shoulder to bump into, to be like, okay, cool, hey, I've got your back, yes, I love the sound of that. Oh, by the way, there's a spelling error there. Like, just like real random stuff that sometimes you overlook. And I think that to me is what collaboration is. That to me is what like this new rise of business is. And it's breaking down this freaking bullshit that you have to actually, you have to sacrifice your morals and ethics in order to get ahead. Or you have to, like, I don't know, this is probably going to go on to another topic, but that you have to actually take on board everybody else's thoughts and feelings over what you are passionate about in order to kind of make money doing what you love most. And I call bullshit on all of that. Like, and I was listening, and again, I was saying to Crystal earlier, I don't listen to a lot, I don't pre-use a lot of content. I don't watch a lot of videos of people's content. That's just, that's who I am. But I've been listening to, is it Bashar? And like recently we got sent a video, and it was just, like, you are worthy and deserving of what it is that you're here for, because you're here. And that was like one of the most profound sentences for me recently. And it's not like you haven't heard it before. Like, we've heard it numerous times in all of our walkings, but this really paves the way, I feel, because there's been this like level of separation between, solopreneur and entrepreneur, in that, like the solopreneur believes that they, in my interpretation, that you have to go it alone, that you're on your own. You can't, you're not actually making it until you're making that 6-figure income, and you can actually start kind of, hiring staff, collaborating with big business, getting referrals from whatever. Like, but it's like there's a level of like hustle and bustle. But the entrepreneur for me is that person that's making the multi-figures, is getting that time and life freedom, and is able to actually make choices. And this is like, it's all the same. It's just our interpretation. So anyway, I'll let Crystal or Alison go for a bit.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, when you were talking about all of that, like this whole idea of the solopreneur, in a way, it's almost like a trap, and kind of making you subscribe to a lot of these ideals out there, that you need to do all the things, you need to learn all of these different task because you have to do it by yourself. And it's really like it's pulling it kind of keeps the solopreneur down in a way. Like it keeps them from actually doing the things that are going to help them to reach more people, to do their work in the world, because they're so caught up in all of these different like things that are coming at them, like this is the latest strategy, this is how you have to do it because you got to do it all on your own, and so I'm an expert, you need to listen to this, you got to do it this way, and really takes them out of their own individual sovereignty, I guess would be maybe the best way to put it, in integrity of what it is that's actually right for them in their business. And so I, in a lot of ways, I feel like that ideal in that term is a way to somewhat keep that solopreneur stuck in this like almost endless cycle and not really getting ahead or getting where they need to be, because they're not reaching out for support for somebody else to tell them, well, and I actually had this conversation the other day with somebody, and about a business that they were looking at, and they were like, well, can you help me with a website? And I'm like, but why do you want a website? Like, what is the website actually going to do? Like, what is the purpose of it? Is it like you're trying to market to people? Like, why do you feel you need it? But that's like so many times the first thing that we hear, because to be a legitimate business, you need to have a website. Well, maybe at some point, but no, not really. I mean, if you don't have an audience for your website, why do you need a website? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, but it's so funny because there's so many of these things that are kind of like indoctrinated in a way as far as how you need to run a business, especially as a solopreneur, in order to be successful. And all of those things are just really just
Noise.
it's like a distraction. Yeah, it's a distraction from what it is you need to do. And it cuts you off from actually seeking help from people who have walked that path before, that can tell you, no, you don't need to do that, or even ask the question like, okay, well, what is it exactly you're trying to do? Why is it like you feel you need this? And I mean, this goes to email marketing, this goes to social media promotion, it goes across so many different areas within business that we think we have to have all these different pieces. But it really comes back to first, really establishing what your vision is, what your purpose is, and then who your ideal audience is, and how do you want to reach them? Because there isn't a right and wrong way necessarily to do business. I mean, there does have to be some sort of systems or structures to it, but it doesn't all have to look the same for everyone. But that's
Can we go deeper on that?
Sure. How
Sorry,
deep would you like to go?
No, because I actually feel like this actually brings up a really, really, really vital point, actually a couple of points, right? So it's like, really, what do you really need? And I know we spoke about this when we first did that first live, right? So it's like, what do you actually really need? You need
an audience,
like an audience.
Yeah.
You need a payment process, an offer, a payment processor, and a topic to talk on.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's not, you don't need the bells and whistles. And and I know each of us have got an experience in this, and I do want to kind of say it, because it's just like, for the new, and maybe not even new, right? For the person out there who is maybe trying to figure out what their path is, what their way in the world. Maybe you've just come out of a training, you've just done you've got a modality, maybe you've got a couple of modalities under your belt. And, I know my experience was that seeking and searching of, okay, well, if I just do this, or I just have this, and, and it's funny because like one of my close friends, we actually had this topic when we're at Seven Sisters. She's like, you don't need anything. And it was just like, and even like all these years down the track, it's like we're outsourcing what we actually do need to fill a void that we're actually filling within ourselves of maybe not being worthy, maybe not being good enough, maybe whatever that is for each individual person, that gets them to seek and search outside of themselves, that goes, okay, well, I have to have a website, I have to have an audience, I need to bring my Instagram following to X amount. You know, you'll have caveats and beliefs that you have around why you aren't successful in the way that you desire to be in this moment. And we all have them, even us down this path of wherever we're at in the moment, right? We all have rules and restrictions over why we're not where we desire to be. But I'm sorry, ultimately, you're not where you desire to be because you haven't chosen to be there. Like, and that is confronting as hell.
Yeah.
But you're not where you desire to be because you haven't chosen to be there. It doesn't matter about the website, doesn't matter about the Facebook or the Instagram or the TikTok following. If you're not putting yourself out there and you don't have the results that you desire, or maybe you haven't dug deep enough into what it is that you're here to do, and you're outsourcing that need, then you're not actually looking within for what that reason is. And I'm not going to go too deep on that one because I know you both have something to say on that as well. So
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because if you break down, like, not even business, but commerce, like if you go and think of what commerce is, like, it's essentially an exchange of goods or services for value or value in kind. There's no mention of like money. Money is a very modern concept. And so essentially it's two people coming together. They're like, hey, I like that. Oh yeah, I've got it. And then you decide on what you're going to choose to be value for something like that. And then you exchange it. With modern business, in a sense, it's got so wrapped up in itself that it's forgotten what its kind of core intention is. And that's essentially to exchange value. And the really interesting thing, like even just talking about, like, even if you just talk about the word solopreneur, which is what we're talking about at the moment, and then entrepreneur, like even in the word, it actually traps you, like what Crystal was saying, like the word itself actually traps you within one thing, solo, all by yourself, you're all alone, you're all over here. When you talk about entrepreneurship and like being an entrepreneur and stuff like that, that actually has much more of an expanded kind of energetic nature to it, because the reality is that many of the really cool things that have happened in the world are because of entrepreneurs, because realistically they're most likely innovators, visionaries, creatives and stuff like that. And that's how society has moved forward. So it's a very interesting, even just look at those two words. But I mean, it's funny because I do tech for people, I build websites and stuff like that. And always the first question I hear or I ask people is like, why do you want that? Like, what's the reasoning behind it? And usually it's because one of, a couple of things, I'll be taken seriously. Like, it's not actually the thing, it's actually what you think the thing will bring you. And I'm here to tell you now, that's not actually going to happen. Because what you really need to dig into is you really need to dig into the reasons why you're using that as a mask underneath the actual real intention of what you want to do. Like, is it because like you don't think that your offer is good enough, like something needs to happen here, and you're just trying to like paste over on top of it doing a website? Because what happens is you go through a process, and in that process you basically, let's be honest, because I've seen that happen a lot of times, you'll self-sabotage yourself a lot in the way, and you'll be like, oh, I don't know how to do tech, all these blocks happen, all this stuff happens, and it basically blows up in your face. The reality is you probably don't want to be online because you don't want to be taken seriously for what you believe in. Like, and that's a harsh reality, but it's something that I see a lot, especially when it comes to website design, because it's used as a mask for what's actually going on underneath. Tech in general, like I see tech blocks or tech issues sometimes is actually, it's an internal kind of mechanism that people do and sometimes use because, there's a lot of tech and stuff out in the world, as a reason not to do something. And I see it because I do it myself and I have done it myself. And that's why in a lot of things that I do, like I look at, is it simple? Like if it's not simple and it's complex, and that means that basically my own bullshit has got in the way. And so I need to tidy that up and kind of fix it up and make things flow and stuff like that. But it's a minefield out there, because I think a lot of the old, and I'm saying old because they're actually dying, like old ways of doing business are kind of like mixed up and muddled in the new way, and we're trying to discern and separate ourselves from those two kind of ways of being in business. And one of the easiest ways that I can offer, I guess, for people. If you're coming at a crossroads and, do I want to do email campaigning? Do I want to do YouTube or podcast or blah, 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 blah. Is sometimes to look to nature. Like nature has all the answers. In nature, there's no such thing as perpetual growth. So that kind of economy of scale in the government, it's a complete and utter farce. So, look to nature. How does she collaborate? How does she combine all of the beautiful things together? Everyone does their own thing. Everyone's in their little genius moments and they all come together and create this kind of symphony. And I think that's what business or entrepreneurship is in a way. It's actually getting everyone together to sing their own little notes and their tunes and songs. And it creates this amazing kind of orchestra and symphony that would not have existed otherwise. But in some ways, we really need to let down the guard, be vulnerable, ask for help. Because in that moment of kind of vulnerability and asking for help, that's actually where the true magic happens. Because we're like, holy shit, I didn't know that. And so, yeah, that's kind of part of what I want to talk about as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And then like what we actually allow to get in the way, which overcomplicates things. Because like Alison, I do quite a bit of tech in people's businesses. And it's not very often that I will recommend going to, like taking it to another level. Because like I just feel like we can keep it so simple and we can just keep it easy. But literally it was like on the weekend, we needed to actually look at something for someone. And I said to Alison, I'm like, look, the only way to avoid the problems that are coming out is to potentially go down this path. And obviously we consult with each other on quite a few projects. And, that was something that literally I was just like, nah, like this has become overcomplicated in its simplicity. Like, and I think this is where we sabotage, like, and it doesn't, whether it's tech or it's, like whatever area that is for people. It's like literally we go down this pattern and it's not always what we think it is. Like, often, you go through your training, you go through, whatever it is that you want to do, maybe you come up with an idea and the speed hump tends to be something that you're not looking for, you're not looking at, and it literally comes and, takes you off that path purely because we expect that the sabotage is going to come from a different space. And it doesn't always have to happen that way. It doesn't have to be that way, but we have to get honest with ourselves about what that looks like. And it's like, often it's just like, and this is for me is where I actually do feel like collaboration has the strongest point, because others can see our shadows, and when it comes to business, when somebody truly knows who you are, and not just personally, but in business, they can see the shadow before you're even going to be looking at it in the mirror. Someone who truly has your best interests at heart is actually going to be able to help you in that space. And sometimes it's just planting the seed. Sometimes you're not ready to hear it in this moment, but I feel like this is where that collaboration environment actually has, like, I feel like it's probably one of the biggest merits for it, because it's like, when it's like, hey, I'm having this place and I'm struggling, those who know you in business are able to actually go, hey, this is where you're stumbling.
Yeah, it's the fascinating thing that I've realized about like true collaboration, because like, let's be honest, there's a lot of BS ways that people do collaboration out there. But like true collaboration is kind of essentially everyone's coming together in this open kind of way, being open to new ideas. And the reality is that like what Lauren was, Laura was saying, is that we're coming together and it's like seed sowing. So we sow all these seeds, which are basically our ideas, our thoughts, our perception, and they kind of all get thrown into this amazing like compost in the middle, basically. And then from that, all these different ideas and stuff can grow. And it's not necessarily the seed, but it's maybe hearing the seed in like 5 different ways. And you're like, oh, okay, so that's how I can, make that plant grow. That's how I can do that thing. And so that's the real benefit anyhow for me, for like real true collaboration, is that there's this real sense of honesty that comes forward. And it's like there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in it, but like there's honesty, there's vulnerability, there's truth, there's also ethics and morality that's involved into it. But the biggest thing I think is that we all care like about each other, and we all care about each other, that we know this concept that when one rises, we all rise. And it's a win-win-win situation across the board. And that is something that you have to arrive at in a mindset way, because the reality is that competition is a huge thing out there. I mean, it starts from school. And so when you can kind of extricate yourself from that mindset and you start to see that everyone is on their own unique journey, everyone has their own amazing geniusness, even though you might have the same idea, the way that it's executed, the way that you talk about it, the way that you actually deliver it, it's going to be completely different. And I mean, yeah, sure, you can like patent it or like whatever you want to do, like, you know, trademark your intellectual property. But I think honestly, for me, like that's not even my intellectual property. That's come from like the gods kind of thing, like the universe.
Everything's learned anyway.
Yeah. And so you kind of refine it over time. But I think one of the biggest things that I've come to the awareness, I think, even for myself, is yes, I have modalities. Yes, I have been trained and I have acquired different skills across many different areas. But the reality is, it's not until I actually sat my ass down, stopped doing stuff, and actually looked at it and went, oh, okay, how does that weave into who I am? And how can I create something different from that is like, has a similar vein, but it's actually me. Like you cannot know that it's anyone else but me, and then that's called integration and embodiment, by the way. And then when that happens, like that's the truly magical kind of thing that occurs, is that it is different from what you've been taught, because it's been woven in with there's your cat, been woven in with
Sorry, my feet are being attacked.
And what you are as a person. And that's really, really important to do. Like if you have a modality or anything like that as well that you train in, is to actually stop for a moment and actually like integrate that. What do I need? What do I like? Don't I like? And that's discernment, choice, courage, like, you know, being willing to stand out on your own on that information and own it for yourself, because it is different, because it comes from you.
Let's face it, your clients don't give a damn what modality you use. Like, really, because all they care about is the results, you know, and that's not being nasty, and it's not being rude. It's like people don't care about, I know for me, I don't go to a coach and go, are you trained in XYZ modality, unless I'm looking for something specific, you know?
Yeah.
But like your clients don't care about what modalities or what modality you utilize. What they care about is how you help them bring the results out within themselves. You know, and that's ultimately what they care about. Like, you know, and I've seen this like said so many times online, and I know it's probably been like the last 2 years that it's really kind of hit home, because, you know, obviously going through, you know, numerous kind of, you know, I do have a number of modalities under my belt, but going through different processes, you know, in my own kind of journey has actually led me to this place that actually everything's kind of amalgamated together, and you can't pull anything out, because it's actually all like, it's all kind of amalgamated together to become this unique voice, is the unique thing that actually is to me. And, you know, I was speaking recently to someone, I was just like, for me, that was the intention all along. It was like, you know, okay, you're going to study this, but how do you bring you out in that? You know, and obviously, you know, without speaking to the elephant in the room, you know, that was not possible in some spaces, because, you know, there was like a level of like wanting to create carbon copies, you know, and, you know, it's got to be done this way, it's got to be done that way. And it's like, actually, that's not the unique voice that we're looking for. And that's not what the collectives are requiring. Because again, majority of people do not care what modality you use. They care about how they feel afterwards.
Yeah. And that's also about like this egoic kind of quality to replicate. And like, I get it, I understand it. But the reality is to go anywhere, you need to innovate. And to innovate, that's how you combine all of those things together, your secret magical juice that you have. And that's actually, you know, what happens at the end of it. It's an innovation of what you've already learned in the intellectual property, your life experience, all of that kind of stuff gets coalesced and kind of condensed into that like cauldron of life that you have. And then what comes out is completely you in some way, shape, or form. But that does require some choice, you know, some taking time and discovering what that could be for you. Yeah, I struggled a lot when I had training from certain people to then be like, okay, well, this is how they taught it, so this is how I'm going to teach it. And, you know, I did it and I was just like this just feels horrible. And it's not until I sat down and went, okay, so how can I weave all of this together? Because they look really like despondent. They don't look like they belong together. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, it is. They do. And that's the thing. Like they all belong together. They all can interact together because it's coming through you. And you are essentially the core of the genesis of what comes out from that. And that's really magical. And sometimes that process only really happens when you actually take stock of everything and what kind of you want to jettison on the way out. Be like, yeah, that ain't me, you know, that ain't coming towards. And then weaving it with all the virtues and the values that you have and the ethics and stuff like that. And then kind of moving forward from there. But yeah, it just, you know, slow down sometimes. That's all it requires.
Yeah,
Take
the
a
power of the
moment.
pause.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that kind of has come up often in a lot of different ways is as we are kind of transitioning, and there's still some people kind of operating in the old kind of way of doing things, and then there's people who are now moving towards this new way, is like this level of discernment. And so like even in collaborations, like to truly collaborate, like you have to collaborate with people who are there for pure intentions, pure heart, you know what I mean? Because there are people out there that are still operating on that competition, and you know that you might actually have to worry about them, you know, taking and running with, you know, your ideas. So it does take a level of discernment. And then, you know, even as like Allison and Laura were talking about, like when you're gaining teachings from people, or you're hiring a coach, or you're hiring a mentor, like that level of discernment as to like, do they actually align to your baseline values and ethics? Because if they don't, then you're going to end up in a situation where it doesn't feel good, or you're trying to apply those teachings, or maybe they're not allowing you to apply those teachings the way that you want to apply them, and allow you to bring your own unique genius into the work that's being done. And like was brought out, I mean, that's the way of evolution. That's the way forward, is to be able to then take what all of your, you know, life experiences, you know, the things that you learn, modalities, and all of that, and bring your unique perspective to it. And that's also the beauty of collaboration, because it's like everybody has a unique perspective that they can share with you, that like Allison said, like sometimes it takes, you know, 4 or 5 different perspectives, and you're like, oh, okay, all of a sudden the dots connect, and you're like, wow, like I mean, it's like mind blowing. You're like, wow, why didn't I see that before? But it does, I mean, you've got to also have that discernment of who it is that you're kind of allowing into your field, both in collaborations and in like modalities, and in coaching, and in personal relationships as well. I mean, the people kind of that you allow to come into your field directly kind of affect, you know, kind of your experience, I guess.
Yeah.
It's actually
It's
really
interesting.
fascinating.
Yeah, it's super interesting. You go.
No, go for it. It's all good.
I'll just quickly jump in. I was watching a reel, as you do late at night, with Tegan Swan, and I know she's pretty controversial, but I find her way that she cuts through a lot of the BS like very liberating. And she was actually talking about single mothers, and she was saying that the number one, I guess, not that it's success, but the number one indicator of, you know, as a mother being able to parent appropriately is actually a supportive partner. So if you kind of extrapolate that in and pull it out and think about it as in like your business journey, like the number one indicator of, I think, anyone on their business journey being able to do what they need to do and hyper focus on like their genius, their offers, their work, is actually having supportive people around you. Because what happens is there is, you know, if you're a single mom, or if you're a parent and stuff, like even if you're a parent, if you have the ability to not worry about the stuff that's going on around you, and you don't have to take that into account, you can actually focus and pour what she basically said, oil of the love into that child. When the basic things are taken care of, you know, that safety, security kind of thing, like when that's taken care of, then you can pour everything into your creation, your being, however you want to talk about it. So yeah, that's how I would also say that. So it applies to entrepreneurship.
Excuse me.
Yeah, look, and I fully agree with that, because it's like if you do not feel safe within you to be you, how do you actually put that out to the world? And I think this is something that, you know, we've seen quite significantly, like, just to kind of like, you know, take that further, because it's like, you know, I was doing some work with someone a couple of weeks back, and, you know, I said this like random, which I always do, like I said this like random comment around something, kind of like tap back into it, like it was talking about like the motivators. It was talking about, like, you know, obviously we all have internal and external motivations, right, of where we want to go and what we want to do. And this was specifically around goals, and it was around, you know, like either being reluctant to set goals, or setting goals and not achieving them, and then doing the thing where they no longer set goals because they're fearful of, if they set goals, they're not going to achieve them, so therefore they don't set them. You know, so we'll talk about like internal and like, well, intrinsic, extrinsic motivators, internal, external motivators, right? So, you know, and I think this is the part for me where, you know, through some of the most difficult times, I'm not someone who gets motivated by, like, I don't get motivated in chaos. Like, so if my emotions are all over the place, I'm not motivated by that. Whereas I have clients, and I know some of my own mentors have been people where they've had their, you know, their pray to God moment, and, you know, down on their knees, just being like, I don't know what to do. And that is their moment to, you know, to catapult. For me, I know that is not mine. And I spent so long trying to actually recreate that it was that moment of being like, oh, I don't create like that. The chaos for me is not is not something, and that's actually helped me understand where often when I have clients come my way, they're not in that space of being in a level of, you know, maybe desperation. They're in a state of, they've gone way beyond that, and now they're at a complete loss, you know. And that's where I feel like this is where the support comes to, because we don't want people to get to that point. We don't want people to get to a point where they no longer see their value. They no longer see what value they can put to the world in order to be able to create the level of success that they desire to create, you know. And this is probably one of the biggest areas that support structures come into place, because, you know, as humans, we all feel for one another in some, whether you're empathetic or not. That, you know, I don't want to see someone else struggle with knowing what the genius is and kind of living their life with a smile on their face. You know, we've all been in environments where we're kind of forced to be in there because work-wise, we don't have another choice, you know, but maybe that environment has not suited us for such a very long time that you keep accepting things that are way below like your value, purely because you feel like you have no choice, you know. And this is about breaking that cycle and actually creating that space, which, you know, is something that we've been talking about creating for such a long time. And I feel like even in this conversation, it's probably shifted slightly, right? So it's just like, you know, and it's, you know, it's the shift. Like, we actually get to be the shift in one another's lives. And I don't know if that's actually its working name, but, you know, at this point in time, I'm just going to kind of say that it is that, you know, but it's actually bringing this level of collaboration to you, and for you to bring that to your world, because, yeah, but I'll let maybe Crystal talk about where that actually goes.
Yeah, so it's something we've been talking about really since, I guess, shortly after we started the admin agency. It was like, you know, the admin agency itself is great for, you know, tasks, but it's like there's another level there. There's another level of support that we desired to have, and to either people, you know, starting off their business, or, you know, at a point where they're looking to kind of rebrand, or maybe they've just lost the passion in their business and they're just like, I don't know what to do anymore. Like, they've kind of lost themselves in their business. And it's like, the admin tasks themselves are meaningless until we get to like back to that place where you're lit up by your business, that you're excited to actually do the thing. So yeah, we've been talking about this group program, and it's evolved in like kind of what we thought it was going to be, and I'm sure it'll continue to evolve up to the launch in the first part of 2024. But yeah, we're desiring to go into 2024 offering like that level of support for people, to really have not only us, with our expertise in all of our different areas of business, but also having like a sisterhood. Maybe it's also a brotherhood, I don't know, we'll see who comes into it, but you know what I mean, like to have that true collaboration with other entrepreneurs that are doing the same thing, they're walking the same walk with you in 2024. And so yeah, that's coming soon. And so I thought like how perfect also this title of this live stream was, because it spoke to, like I said, that work we began in 2023 with the virtual admin agency, and then what we saw in that as far as like, okay, we need to offer a higher level of support to really give people what they need, to give them that community, so they aren't the solopreneur, they aren't doing it by themselves, not only on the admin side and the task, but actually like having people who truly care about them and can give them that level of support.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like when I think of all of the times that I've, grown or evolved or innovated in business, it's always been in either communication or conversation or collaboration with another person. Like I'm very good at sitting in my own head and dreaming into things, but it's not it's until you actually kind of, it falls out of your mouth in a way with somebody else's ears listening, that it actually becomes real. And sometimes that's all that's needed is a conversation, to kind of go, yeah, I could do that. I totally could do that. And that happens in an environment where, you feel safe to share, I guess, in a lot of ways. And as a group program, like group programs for me are just like the business, like the bee's knees kind of thing, because you're essentially pouring all of this genius like into this container, and then you can come and go as you choose, but the thing is it's always there, like it's always going to be there, and people are imparting their knowledge, their wisdom, their experience, and you're like, hey, I think the other thing as well with like support structures like this, even a group program, is some of the times we get lost in the minutiae of everything. And in a group program, there's the capacity for, if you're watching and communicating and engaging and stuff like that, to be able to lift yourself above it, and actually see with like a bird's eye view, because people go, oh, how about this perspective, this perspective, this perspective, and it pulls you out of the minutiae. And I think that's a really amazing thing about group programs in general, is obviously the support, the collaboration, but when you think that you're just like, damn, this is real shit house, like you can go in there and be like, oh no, actually it's not that bad, other people go through this as well. Like I think that's one of the things about the solopreneur that really needs to die, is that we're the only ones that are going through this. It happens for everyone at various stages and various intensities within their business journey and stuff like that. And it's always nice, like I don't know what it is, like it's just nice to come in and share about what's going on, because ultimately in the sharing is where the magic happens. That's the reason why I love group programs, and why this kind of support structure that we're setting up for this is essentially what I think we've all desired in our business journey. We've kind of poured into this container. So yeah, it's going to be really amazing.
Well, it's somewhere to share the highs and the lows with people who get it, and,
Yeah.
and obviously because we come from, three very different perspectives, but equally it's all quite aligned. Like we actually have the ability to see how to get out of the rut, and essentially like, and I think what we're looking to create and what, we're putting together here is something that, yeah, we all did desire. Like, but, I think the biggest thing for me, which I've found on my entrepreneurial journey, is being quite selective with, where I do share those wins, like, because a lot of people just don't get it,
Mhm.
and I think like when something happened a couple of weeks ago and I came to you both and I shared it, and it was just like, because you both knew the journey, so it was like the celebration was actually from a place of like having known the journey and knowing just how like like tedious it had been to get to that place, you know. And like for me, it's like I don't want to explain the journey, because that just gives more power to the story, right? Like, so it's like, so whatever journey you've been on, it's like you don't have to explain the journey, because ultimately we have the ability to foresee what it's taking you to get to this place. Like, and so that to me is the magic in you know, a collaboration and a group program of this nature, because it's, you know, it really is you know, what we're wanting to create is a space that, you know, I foresee going into, you know, what the old like business, you know, support groups used to be, right? Like you actually get to come in, you know, and it sounds really freaking trivial, but it's just, it's like, how often do you have something which, yeah, it's just, you know, it's like when, I don't know, I don't know, I liken it to when, like, you know, when you got a new baby, you know, and we're all mums, so we kind of get this, like you got a new baby and they do something for the first time, and it's only other mums that really actually get that, because it's like, you know, it's the same in business, because like those who don't have new babies, or maybe those who are beyond having little children, they no longer like see those first for what they are, you know, because it's like, oh, we've been there, done that. And I feel like in a way business is the same, you know. When you're in a different space, it's maybe not that spiritual entrepreneurship, like you don't see those first, or those wins, or those the journey to get to this place as the same anymore, like because we've become, you know, disconnected from that, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. Man, there's a lot of food for thought.
Well, it's kind of 11:11. I feel like that's actually really appropriate to kind of almost like tie up and finish up.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I can't do it now. It's 11:12.
No, we just gonna go another hour now. Yeah, but I mean, I feel like, yeah, we had a really great discussion and kind of opened up, you know, a lot of different avenues tonight. And we actually kind of have a running list of some other topics that we want to chat about. So we are going to be doing a couple more of these. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. We will announce when the next one will be and what the title is once we vote on which one is most alive in us that week. But yeah, we're going to do these leading up into the launch of the group program in 2024. So yeah, I'm so excited. Everybody who either joined in and watched us live or catches us on the replay. And yeah, if there's anything in particular you want us to talk about, you can also throw it in there. Like I said, we have a running list, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't incorporate into something we already, because yeah, shared experience, you know, that what's going on in the collective is, you know, felt across. So I'm sure whatever it is that you have going on or that you want us to talk about probably fits in somewhere in the things that we see going on, that are kind of on our list anyway. So
Awesome. Yay.
all right.
Thank you, everyone.
See
Thank
ya.
you. All right. Have a good night.